Welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. For today's discussion, we've picked up a number of articles from The Hindu and the Indian Express, which are both important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. Now, let us have a look at the topics one by one. The first article for the day has been taken from page number 10 of the Indian Express, Health on a Hot Planet. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the threat of heat waves as summer advances across the subcontinent of India. Also, we'll be discussing about the recent heat wave alert that has been issued by the IMD, that is the Indian Meteorological Department, in various states across the country. So here, for the UPSC perspective, we'll be covering what are heat waves and what are the criterion for the IMD for the classification of heat waves, the causes, the impacts, as well as the mitigation and adaptation strategies of heat waves. The next article for the day has been taken from page number 9 of The Hindu. Can green credits benefit India's forests? So this particular article discusses about the recently proposed India's green credit program that actually aims to incentivize the environmental restoration through market-based mechanisms and its potential conflicts with the existing environmental laws. The next article has been taken from page number 10 of The Hindu, RBI's draft rules for the payment aggregators. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the recently issued draft rules of the Reserve Bank of India for the payment aggregators, especially the offline payment aggregators. So in this particular article, for the UPSC relevance, we'll be discussing about the concept of what are payment aggregators, its types, as well as the provisions under the new rules. And this can be relevant for your UPSC preliminary examination. The fourth article for the day, rising incidences of IBD across the globe is a cause of concern. This particular article has been taken from the science section of The Hindu, and here we'll be discussing about what is this inflammatory bowel disease, what are the causes, the symptoms, as well as the treatments associated with the same, and this actually becomes relevant from the general science point of view for both your prelims as well as your mains examination. The last article for the day has been taken from page number 4 of The Hindu. For Dongria Kondhs clearing their names from the Naxal cases a priority before they vote. The article discusses the issue where the Dongria Kondh tribe has actually alleged or has said that they have been falsely booked as Naxalites or Maoists just because they actually protested against bauxite mining in the Niamgiri hills of Odisha. And we will conclude the session by practicing few prelims as well as mains practice questions. The first article for the day is Health on a Hot Planet. So this particular article actually discusses about the threats that can be posed by the heat waves as the summers are advancing in the Indian subcontinent, and also we will be discussing about the importance or the caution that has been given or issued by the Indian Meteorological Department on the heat wave alert across various states in the country. And here we'll be discussing from the UPSC perspective what is the heat wave, what are the criteria that has been used by the IMD for classifying heat wave condition, as well as the causes, the impacts, the mitigation, as well as the adaptation strategies. So now moving on, here we'll be discussing about the concept of heat waves as it forms an integral part of the topic of climate change, and we will actually map this entire article or the topic under GS paper 3, environmental pollution and degradation mains examination. So moving forward, let us actually look at the previous year question. So there has been a question in the year 2013 asked in the mains examination regarding the formation of heat islands. So similarly, heat waves actually becomes very, very important as a part of climate change for both your prelims as well as the mains examination. Now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So as the temperatures actually increase, the threat of heat waves actually looms as the summer advances in the Indian subcontinent. And also we should know that the Indian Meteorological Department, that is the IMD, has issued a heat wave alert in various states across the Indian peninsula as the temperatures have soared within the range of 42 to 45 degrees Celsius. So moving forward, it is important to understand what is the definition of heat waves both qualitatively and quantitatively. So qualitatively, heat wave is a condition of air temperature which becomes very fatal or it becomes a threat to the human body when exposed to it. And quantitatively, if you see, it is defined based on the temperature thresholds over a particular region in terms of actual temperature or its departure from the normal temperature that has been existing in that particular area. Now let us actually look at the different criterion that has been taken into consideration by the IMD for declaring the heat wave condition or situation in India. So it says that heat wave is considered if the maximum temperature of a station reaches at least 40 degrees Celsius or more for plains, and for hilly regions it is actually at least 30 degrees Celsius or more. Moving forward, based on the temperature or the departure of temperature from the normal, it is actually considered a heat wave situation if the departure from the normal is 4.5 to 6.4 degrees Celsius, and it is considered to be severe heat wave in nature if the temperature departure from the normal is greater than 6.4 degrees. Moving ahead, based on the actual maximum temperature, it is considered as the heat wave situation when the actual maximum temperature is greater than or equal to 45 degrees, and it is considered to be severe in nature when it is greater than or equal to 47 degrees Celsius. And here it is important to note that if the above criteria is actually met at least in 2 stations in a meteorological subdivision for at least 2 consecutive days, then the heat wave will be declared on the second consecutive day. And also, what are the criterion for describing a heat wave in coastal region is that when the maximum temperature departure is 4.5 degrees Celsius or more from the normal, heat wave may be described provided actual maximum temperature is 37 degrees Celsius or more. Now let us actually look at various causes of heat waves. First is actually the high pressure system. Here, when a high pressure system, often referred to as a heat dome, this actually becomes stationary over a region, it leads to the sinking air and clear skies, and this actually prevents the release of heat through the process of convection or rainfall and cloud formation. Thereby, this actually traps the heat near the surface and causes the temperature to rise. Okay, so here if you look at this particular image, you can see that there is already an existing air column, that is warm air column, and due to the presence of high pressure, this actually creates or exerts more pressure on this particular warm air column, and thereby this compressed air actually gets even more hotter, and this is what it is actually called as a heat dome when it persists in a particular region stationary for a period of time. So here you can see a mass of warm air actually builds up in still dry summer conditions, and here you have the high pressure in the atmosphere. This actually pushes the warm air down, and finally the air is compressed and gets even more hotter. The second reason is the GHG, that is the greenhouse gas emission, as well as global warming. So as the planet's average temperature rises, the likelihood and the intensity of the heat waves actually increase, and as you can see in the IPCC, that is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change 6th Assessment Report, this projects that for 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming, there will be increasing heat waves and longer warmer seasons as well as shorter cold seasons. And also the report predicted that India would suffer more frequent as well as intense heat waves as well as increased precipitation in the remaining decades of the 21st century. So moving forward, the next one is increasing or rapid urbanization as well as the land use changes. So here, urban areas which is actually characterized by skyscrapers and buildings, roads, etc., as well as the other infrastructure, these actually tend to absorb and retain more heat than the rural areas, and this actually leads to the formation of urban heat islands, and this effect is also exacerbated by the lack of vegetation and the prevalence of heat absorbing materials like concrete as well as asphalt. The next one is drought, and lack of precipitation is also another cause for this particular heat wave. That is, when the soil is dry, more of the sun's energy is used to heat the air rather than evaporate moisture from the ground, and this can lead to higher temperatures and it can further aggravate the conditions of heat waves. And next one is El Nino effect. I hope all of you know what is this El Nino effect. This is nothing but the warming of the Eastern Pacific Ocean during the El Nino events. This affects the global weather patterns, including the temperature, rainfall, as well as the patterns of winds across the globe, and the summer of 2024 is actually predicted to be excessively hot due to the occurrence of the El Nino event. Now moving forward, let us quickly understand what are the various impacts of heat waves. Okay. So here the first one is actually the economic impact. If we actually look at the reduced labor productivity, according to the ILO estimates, ILO says that India will actually lose around 5.8% of its total labor hours in the year 2030 due to the increased, heat as well as the humidity conditions. So moving forward, energy system strain. This is nothing but when the temperature actually increases, there is more demand for air conditioners, that is the cooling systems during these heat wave occurrences, and this can actually strain the energy systems. Moving on, we have agriculture damage. Okay, that is the 2022 heat wave in India. This actually caused around 4.5% drop in the wheat production. Now, so this we are here done with the economic impacts. Now moving to the health as well as the social impacts. First is there are health related illness. So here it is actually important to note that there are impacts such as we have the heat cramps, we have the exhaustion, heat strokes, etc., particularly that are actually affecting the elderly population and especially those with that of the chronic diseases. So we have a number of heat related illness like heat strokes, etc. The next one, if you see, is increased mortality. Here it is very important to understand or to note certain statistics. Here India has actually seen a 55% increase in the deaths due to increased heat when compared to the period of 2000 to 2004 to 2021, and this was actually found by the Lancet studies. Moving on, apart from heat related illness as well as increased mortality, other social impact include impacts of the vulnerable groups. Okay, so here we actually see that the marginalized section of the population, they suffer disproportionately because they have limited access to cooling, that is air conditioners, etc., as well as healthcare at the same time. Now moving on to look at few of the ecological impacts. Okay, so the first one is wildlife as well as the stress on the ecosystem. This is nothing but there is habitat loss, there is species migration, as well as potential extinction events that actually takes place. Okay, like for example, we can quote the Australian bushfires of 2020. The next one is increased wildlife risk. This is nothing but higher temperatures and dry conditions. This actually pose or increase or elevate the risk of the wildfires there, thereby affecting the ecosystem. And the last one is water scarcity. Here you have elevated or increased evaporation, and this will increase your drought conditions. For example, you can see the Colorado River Basin. Okay, so these are the various impacts of heat waves. We had actually classified and read the economic impacts, the health as well as the ecological impacts. Now moving on, let us actually look at the mitigation as well as the adaptation strategies. The first one, mitigation strategies. First, we need to aim at reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, that is, promote renewable energy and improve energy efficiency. Next, followed by enhancing carbon sinks either in terms of forest as well as the oceans, where we need to implement afforestation and protect ecosystem. Next one is transitioning to a circular economy where you encourage the waste reduction as well as sustainable consumption is actually promoted or encouraged. Next one, moving on to the adaptation strategies following the mitigation strategies, is that first is early warning systems as well as preparedness should be there, that is there has to be improved forecast as well as public awareness. Next one, urban planning and infrastructure should be there, so that by encouraging the heat resilient design as well as promoting green spaces. Next one, public health measures should be taken care of, that is you need to strengthen the already existing healthcare system provided specifically targeting the marginalized section of the population, as well as provide cooling centers for the marginalized sections who do not have access to cooling, that is air conditioners, etc. Next one is agriculture as well as food security. We need to promote heat tolerant crops as well as efficient water management. The next article that we'll be discussing about is, can green credits benefit India's forests? So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the India's green credit program and how it actually focuses or emphasizes on incentivizing the environmental restoration through market-based mechanisms and its potential conflict with the existing environmental laws. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is this green credit program and as it is an essential part of of environmental conservation. And moving forward, we can map this particular topic to GS paper 3 for the mains examination under environmental pollution, degradation and conservation. So moving forward, if we look at the previous year question, we have one particular question asked in the year 2014 in the mains examination with respect to that of the carbon credits. Okay, so moving forward, let us actually understand what this particular article is actually talking about. Okay, so the article discusses about the advantages as well as the disadvantages of India's proposed green credit program. So here it is essential for us to understand what is this particular green credit program is all about. Okay, so this was a program that has been introduced by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of India in October 2023, and it is a market-based mechanism which is designed in order to incentivize the environmental as well as ecological restoration efforts by individuals as well as companies. Here, the participants under this particular program can earn green credits for contributing to such initiatives for environmental as well as ecological conservation. Moving forward, now let us understand what are the key features of this particular program. So this program actually covers varied activities, especially 8 specific activities like the plantation of trees, the management of water, sustainable agriculture, waste management, air pollution reduction, then mangrove conservation and restoration, and finally governance as well as administration. Moving forward, the compliance mechanism, that is whatever green credits that is actually accrued, they are used for offsetting the diversion of forest land or as a metric for ESG standards and fulfilling the corporate social responsibility obligations. Then if you look at the next one, that is the Green Credit Registry, there will be an establishment of a registry that is called as the Green Credit Registry to track and to manage the earned credits. And finally, the trading platform, that is there will be a platform which is used for enabling the trading of these green credits on a domestic market. Moving forward, now let us actually understand various advantages which are actually linked to this particular green credit program. Okay, the first one is it encourages environmental restoration. That is, in simple terms, it aims to incentivize the restoration of the degraded forest lands and other environmental initiatives. And also, it includes multiple sectors such as the forestry as well as the waste management. Potentially, it actually broadens the impact of environmental conservation efforts. Moving forward, the next one is that it actually involves the engagement of the private sector. Okay, so by involving the individuals as well as corporations, this particular program aims to leverage the private resources for the public environmental goals. Also, this will result in increasing the scale as well as the funding which are available for the environmental restoration projects. Next one is innovative market-based approach. Okay, so the use of market-based approach actually aligns this particular program with the global trends like the carbon trading, potentially thereby integrating with the voluntary carbon markets. And also, it offers an alternative to the government only funding of the environmental initiatives because the private sectors are also involved, which is crucial in a developing economy facing fiscal constraints. And moving forward, if you look at the disadvantages of the green credit program, the first one is it has a risk of circumventing the existing laws, that is bypassing or surpassing the laws. That is, critics actually argue that the program might allow the participants to bypass the stringent environmental laws that are actually existing or the regulations, particularly those which actually concern the conservation of the forest. Moving forward, this can actually potentially undermine the established environmental protection frameworks and can lead to prioritization of industrial growth over ecological integrity. The next negative or the disadvantage is that potential for a negative ecological impact. This is nothing but the focus on afforestation could lead to unintended consequences such as the monoculture plantations, which do not support the biodiversity as effectively as the natural forests do. Next one, there is a concern that the implementation of this particular program may involve clearing of the existing vegetation, which can be detrimental to the local biodiversity as well as the health of the soil. Next one, The next disadvantage which is actually associated with this is the complexities in the implementation of the program. This is nothing but there are associated execution challenges that include ensuring that the guidelines are effectively followed on the ground and that the individuals implementing the program have the necessary expertise. The next one, the program's effectiveness will depend on the accuracy and the feasibility of measuring the environmental impact of the credited activities. The next one is the market dynamics and the fungibility issues. Okay, so here, unlike carbon credits, which are relatively straightforward in order to quantify, that is, with respect to that of carbon credits, it's easy to actually quantify, whereas green credits actually cover a diverse range of activities, as we saw, like water conservation and biodiversity. These parameters or the dimensions are harder to standardize as well as trade. And next one is that this lack of fungibility could complicate the trading system, and potentially this actually limits the efficacy or the efficiency and attractiveness of this particular green credit market. The next article that we'll be discussing about is Reserve Bank of India's draft rules for the payment aggregators. So as the title says, this particular article discusses about the recent draft rules released by the RBI, especially for the offline payment aggregators. So here we'll be discussing about what are payment aggregators and their types, as well as this is an important part of financial inclusion, and the entire topic can be mapped to economy for prelims examination, and for the mains it is under GS paper 3, financial inclusion and economic growth. If you actually see the previous year question, in 2023 there was a prelims question on InvITs, that is interest income from the deposit in infrastructure investment trust. So any kind of financial instruments as well as the impact or the draft rules that are actually brought for the same is actually important for your prelims examination as well as the mains examination. Now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So the Reserve Bank of India has recently proposed new regulations for offline payment aggregators, that is the PAs, in order to improve safety and compliance in transactions. So moving forward, now it is important to understand who are the payment aggregators. Okay, so payment aggregators are the companies that enable the merchants to accept various digital payment methods from that of the consumers. Okay, and they actually act as intermediaries between the merchants and the banks or the payment networks. Now here, moving on, let us actually understand what are the two types of the payment aggregators. So here, first one is online payment aggregators. These are aggregators that facilitate online payment for e-commerce business apps as well as the websites. And some of the examples actually include the Razorpay, the Cash Free, the CC Avenue as well as the PayU. On the other hand, if you see the offline point of sale payment aggregators, that is the PAP, they actually enable the merchants to accept digital payments like the card swipes, UPI, etc. at the physical stores or the outlets. An example of these actually include the Pine Labs, the Innovative Payment Solutions, the M-Swipe, the Paytm for offline merchants, etc. So moving forward, now it is important to understand what are the new rules for the offline or the point of sale payment aggregators. So first one is they actually require mandatory RBI authorization. That is, all the existing and the new payment aggregators will need to obtain the authorization from the Reserve Bank of India by 2025 month of May to continue offering the payment services. Okay. Moving forward, what is the net worth requirement is that existing PAPs need a minimum net worth of rupees 15 crore in order to apply for the Reserve Bank of India authorization, whereas by March 2028, all the PAPs, that is existing as well as the new, must have a minimum net worth of rupees 25 crore. Moving forward, if you look at the security measures, the payment aggregators must become members of the Financial Intelligence Unit, that is the FIU, in order to report any kind of suspicious transactions, and also enhanced security measures are mandated in order to prevent fraud as well as hacking during the POS transactions. Moving forward, looking at the compliance deadline, the existing payment aggregators have 3 months from the final rules to comply with the guidelines on areas like merchant onboarding, complaint management as well as prevention of any kind of fraudulent activities. And moving forward, non-compliant PAPs will have to cease the payment services systems as well as banks will close their accounts by 2025 October unless they show proof of applying for the RBI approval. The next article that we'll be discussing about is rising incidence of inflammatory bowel disease across the globe is a cause of concern, says experts. So as the title suggests here, with respect to that of the UPSC examination as a part of general science, we'll be discussing about this condition of inflammatory bowel disease. So here we will be discussing about IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, and it is a part of general science, and you can actually map this topic to general science under prelims examination and current events of national and international importance. So moving forward, let us actually see that we have a previous year question in the year 2013 in the prelims examination with respect to that of which of the following diseases can be transmitted from one person to another through tattooing. So from here, it is important to understand any kind of disease, its causes, its symptoms, treatments, as well as, the spread is actually very important for the examination. So moving forward, let us understand what this particular article is talking about. So the rising incidence of inflammatory bowel disease, that is IBD, across the globe has become a concern for doctors globally. So more on the news, let us actually see what is the data talking about. So the number of cases of inflammatory bowel disease has increased by around 48%, to be very precise 47.45% from 1990 to the year 2019. Moving forward, in 2019, if we see, there were 4.9 million cases of IBD globally, affecting more than about 0.3% of the world's population. Now, it is important to understand this particular disease or this condition of inflammatory bowel disease, okay? So this is a term which is majorly used for the chronic inflammatory disorders that affect your gastrointestinal tract, okay? And this leads to the inflammation and the damage of the entire digestive system, which actually involves your small intestine, your large intestine, the colon, the rectum, etc. So there are two types of IBD. The main types include the Crohn's disease and the second one is the ulcerative colitis, okay? So here let us actually look at this particular diagram and understand what is ulcerative colitis as well as the Crohn's disease, okay? So here ulcerative colitis is nothing but it only affects the inner lining of the colon as well as the rectum, and it is characterized by inflammation and ulcers that form in the lining of the colon, okay? So it is important to understand that it actually affects only the lining of the colon as well as the rectum. Whereas if you see the Crohn's disease, it can affect any part of the digestive tract starting from the mouth to the anus, okay? So it can either be your colon or the rectum or your mouth or the food pipe, etc. And it is characterized by inflammation that can spread deep into the layers of the affected tissue. So these are the major types of the IBD. Now moving forward, let us actually see the symptoms as well as the causes of this IBD, followed by which we look at the treatment. So here the symptoms actually include severe abdominal pain as well as cramps. It can have, you can have diarrhea, potentially bloody as well as ulcerative colitis, weight loss, and decreased appetite, that is intake of food gradually decreases over a period of time, followed by fatigue, fever, rectal bleeding, more common in ulcerative colitis, as well as joint pain as well as skin issues are the characteristics or the symptoms of IBD. Now looking at the causes, the exact cause is actually unknown, but IBD is a result of a weakened immune system, or sometimes it is said that it is even due to inheritance or inheritance of genetic traits from your ancestors. So here the immune system responds incorrectly to the environmental triggers such as either be it a virus or a bacteria which causes inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract starting from your mouth and ending in the anus. Now there also appears to be a genetic component, and someone with a family history of IBD is more likely to develop this particular inappropriate immune response. Moving forward, is there a treatment for this particular condition? So no cure unfortunately exists for this IBD, but treatments aim to reduce the inflammation as well as manage certain symptoms like fatigue, fever, and then extreme bleeding, etc. And these may include medications, surgery, as well as dietary as well as lifestyle modifications in order to mitigate inflammation and support the immune function. The next article that we'll be discussing about, for Dongria Kondhs clearing their names from the Naxal cases a priority before they vote. So this particular article discusses about the concerns that have been raised by the tribe persons belonging to the Dongria Kondh tribes regarding or alleging that they have been unfairly targeted for resisting the process of bauxite mining in the Niyamgiri hills of Odisha. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the Dongria Kondh tribes as well as the criterion for classification of particularly vulnerable tribal groups in India, that is the PVTGs. So this particular article or this particular topic can be mapped to economic and social development for the prelims examination, and for the mains it can be mapped under GS paper 2, welfare schemes for vulnerable sections of the population. So moving forward, if you look at a previous year question, there has been a question in the year 2013 asked in the prelims examination to match the tribes with the corresponding states. So with this, you actually understand the importance of this particular topic on the tribes, particularly the PVTGs. So moving forward, now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So the tribe persons of the Dongria Kondh tribe have alleged that they have been unfairly targeted for resisting the bauxite mining plan in the Niyamgiri hills of Odisha. So here it is important to understand the background of this particular issue and what is the significance of why this Niyamgiri hills of Odisha has been in news of late. Okay, so the Niyamgiri hills in Odisha has been the home to the Dongria Kondh tribe, who actually face, that is this particular tribal group as well as the Niyamgiri hills, they are actually facing potential threats. First one due to the bauxite mining. The next one is due to the proposed amendments to the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. So let's see what is the Amendment Act actually talking about. So the proposed Forest Conservation Amendment Bill of 2023, this actually seeks to alter the definition of forest that has been set by the Supreme Court of India in the year 1996. Moving forward, according to this particular amendment, the Forest Conservation Act of 2023 will apply only to notified forest areas as per the Indian Forest Act of 1927 and the government records from October 25, 1980 onwards. So here the issue is about 95% of this Niyamgiri land is not classified as the forest in the government records, and thereby this amendment may potentially open a window for diverting a huge acre of land not classified as forest in the government records for other purposes like infrastructural developments as well as other economic activities, and which could impact the Niyamgiri hill range as well as other forest areas in Odisha, as these PVTGs, that is the Dongria Kondh tribes, actually draw their livelihood based on the activities that they carry on at this Niyamgiri hill range. Now moving forward, let us understand who are the Dongria Kondh tribes. As you actually see, these people are the members of the Dongria Kondh tribe. So here, if you see the ethnicity, the Dongria Kondh community belongs to the Kondhs, which are actually the part of the Munda ethnic group, and they are one of the 13 particularly vulnerable tribal groups in Odisha, India. And also, if you see the location, that is where they reside in the Niyamgiri hills, a hill range that spans across 250 square kilometers across the Rayagada as well as the Kalahandi districts of Odisha. And also, if you look at their beliefs as well as the worship, their principal deity is Niyam Raja, also called as a Niyam Raja, whom they worship as the supreme god of the Niyamgiri jungle. And if you look at the population, there are approximately 8,000 Dongria Kondh people who live spanning across 100 villages, and the nomenclature, where do they actually derive the name from, is that the name Dongria Kondh comes from Dongar, which actually means hill, and they call themselves as the Jarniya, meaning protector of the streams. And moving forward, if you see the language that they actually speak in, they speak the Kui language, which is unwritten but it is widely spoken within the tribal community. And moving forward, let us actually look at the lifestyle. They are actually known for their unique jewelry, the tattoos as well as the hairstyles. Here women adorn multiple earrings as well as nose rings, while younger boys actually wear 2 nose rings. And the Dongria girls use hair clips and wear rings as well as beads around their necks. If you look at the economy as well as the livelihood, they rely on the Niyamgiri forest for their livelihood, engaged in horticulture as well as the process of shifting agriculture. And moving forward, there has been a mining dispute which is actually going around, that is the bauxite mining dispute in the Niyamgiri Hills. So here they have been at the forefront of a conflict over mining rights in this particular region, where you can see the Vedanta Resources had actually aimed to mine the bauxite reserves which were valued to a value of around $2 billion beneath the hills. Now, it is also important for us to understand who are these PVTGs and what is the criterion for the classification or assigning a particular group as the PVTGs. So here, PVTGs are more vulnerable among the tribal groups in India. They have some basic characteristics, that is, they are mostly homogeneous with a very, very small population, relatively physically isolated, as well as social institutes cast in a simple mold, and they actually do not have a particular written language, and they're relatively simple, in terms of technology and their upgradation, and a slower rate of change, etc. And if you say the government of India follows the following criteria for the identification of PVTGs, which actually include pre-agricultural level of technology, that is not very advanced in terms of technology, low level of literacy, economic backwardness, as well as a declining or stagnant population. Moving forward, let us see what is the need for identification of the PVTGs. Due to their increased vulnerability, they require a larger allocation of funds, as the most developed as well as the assertive tribal groups tend to take a significant portion of these tribal development funds. And if you see PVTGs in India, how it was actually given the particular term, in 1973, there was a Debar Commission which was created. It created the primitive tribal groups as a separate category who are less developed among the tribal groups. And following that, that is after 2 years, in the year 1975, the government of India declared 52 such groups, while in 1993 there was an addition of 23 more groups, and they were added to this particular category, making it a total of 75 PVTGs. And here in 2006, the government of India renamed the PTGs, that is the primitive tribal groups, as particularly vulnerable tribal groups. And this particular categorization of the PVTGs is done by the Ministry of Home Affairs, and it is very important to know it is not done by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. This is a prelims fact. And among the 75 listed PVTGs, the highest number actually dwell in Odisha. And if you see, we actually saw a previous year question on match the following of the tribes as well as the corresponding states. So you can actually see in this particular table the tribes of actually Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, as well as Karnataka, that is the Jenu as well as the Koraga. In Kerala, you can see the Cholanaik and the Kadar, the Katunaik and the Kurumbas, the Koragas, and then you can see in Maharashtra, Gujarat, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, that is the Abujas, the Baigas, the Bharias, etc. And you can also see the Riyangs in Tripura, you can see the Great Andamanis, the Jaravas, the Onges of the Andaman as well as Nicobar Islands, and you can see in Tamil Nadu we have the Katanaikans, the Kotas, the Kurumbas, the Paniyans, the Irulas, etc. So these all become very, very important for your prelims examination. Now let us solve few prelims as well as mains practice question. The first question reads, consider the following statements about the PVTGs. Low levels of literacy is one of the criteria for the identification of PVTGs. Yes, this is correct. No PVTGs are found in the states of Punjab and Haryana. Yes, this is also correct. The Ministry of Tribal Affairs decides in the categorization of PVTGs. No, it's Ministry of Home Affairs. So which of the statements given above is or are correct? Since statement 3 is actually wrong, only 1 and 2 are correct. So the answer will be option A. Moving on, the second question reads, consider the following statements about inflammatory bowel disease. Crohn's disease as well as the ulcerative colitis are the types of IBD that primarily affect the lungs and liver. No, this is wrong. It is actually associated with the gastrointestinal tract starting from the mouth to the anus. So IBD is caused by a weakened immune system. This is actually correct. Since only statement 2 is correct, your answer will be option B. Moving on, the third question reads, which of the following best describes the heat dome? It is nothing but a phenomenon where high pressure in the atmosphere traps the warm air underneath. So going by this particular option, the answer will be option C. So moving on, the fourth question, consider the following tribes in India: Irulas, Chenchu, Koraga as well as Baigas, and how many of the above are the PVTGs? All the 4 are PVTGs, so your answer will be option D. Moving on, the fifth question actually reads, consider the following statements regarding the new regulations for offline or point of sale payment aggregators, PAP. So they are required to have a minimum net worth of 25 crores. This is wrong, it is actually 15. Then PAPs are required to become members of the Financial Intelligence Unit in order to report any kind of suspicious transactions. This is correct. So since only the second statement is correct, your answer will be option B. Now let us solve the mains practice question. The question reads, examine the potential of the Green Credit Program to enhance India's forest and environmental conservation efforts and evaluate the challenges it may face in the implementation. So this is in 150 words and it's a 10 marker. So the approach to this particular question is divided into the introduction, body as well as the conclusion. So here in the introduction, we will start by briefly defining the Green Credit Program as a mechanism which is aimed at incentivizing environmental restoration as well as conservation through market-based approaches, as well as the conflicts it may actually face with that of the existing environmental laws. Next, in the body, we have to talk about the potential benefits of this particular program, such as enhancing the environmental restoration and engaging the private sector, and introduces innovative market-based approaches. However, we should also discuss about the challenges like possibility of circumventing the strict environmental regulations, the risk of negative ecological impacts, the complexities in effective implementations, as well as the issues with the market dynamics. And towards the conclusion, we need to highlight the need for robust management as well as clear guidelines to realize its full potential. With this, we've actually come to the end of discussion of our daily news analysis. For regular updates, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.